Hi, folks. I just wanted to take some time to discuss with you what just happened, what we've lost, and what most people don't realize we've lost with the announcement by Defense Secretary Ash Carter that all combat arms MOSs will now be open to women. That announcement was coupled with the announcement that the Selective Service plan was now being revised. I'm sure that a few intelligent college age feminists said, wait, what? At that second announcement. Less intelligent college age feminist types are still just cheering because they don't realize what just happened. But we'll talk some more about that later. The Sierra Vista Herald in Sierra Vista, Arizona, had the headline, Armed Forces Welcome the Bravest, Strongest Women to Combat Roles. But that's not at all accurate. Today I'm going to talk about what most people don't realize and what we've lost with this decision. Bear with me on this because I need to take the long way around the barn to get where I'm going. But first I have to digress just a little bit to talk about the two examples that feminists tend to use to support women in combat and support the overall feminist narrative, which generally starts with pointing out that there are female police officers who do just great, and the Israeli army has women. First, let me remove the Israeli army from the equation. Every war that Israel fights is a defensive war for survival of the nation, of the people. If we had similar circumstances here in the U.S., I would say yes, every man, woman, and child above the age of 10 years old should receive as much training as possible in defensive and offensive combat operations, sabotage, etc. But that is not the case. So it's not an acceptable comparison. Secondly, female police officers. Progressive feminists often point out that there are heroic and great female police officers that do a good job every day, and that in itself should be proof that a woman can do great in combat and should be allowed the opportunity, key word here, opportunity to hold a combat position. Now, I've known a great deal of female cops, and let me tell you something, that a good female cop is one of the best cops out there. Because a good female cop varies from procedure less easy to overreact to the situation, better conflict de-escalation skills, and most understand that they have to compensate for less strength and muscle mass by maintaining a high level of fitness. On the other hand, I've met plenty of princesses in blue that allow their male counterparts to shoulder the tough parts of the job. An interesting fact is that the Attorney General's office under Eric Holder sued the Pennsylvania State Police when the Pennsylvania State Police attempted to standardize all physical fitness requirements, therefore no male-female gender differentiation. Just a standard, you must do this A, B, and C to be on the state police. They were sued by the Holder AG. But the question is police work actually the same as a combat arms profession in the military? Certainly police officers may be in combat situations vetted by fire, need to be alert, need to be tactically proficient, need to have good officer survival skills, need to have good gunfighting skills. Yet they operate with a minimal of equipment within the confines of friendly territory in most neighborhoods and get to go home at night. To me, as an experienced infantryman, there's not much of a comparison here. It's sort of apples to oranges on that part. In combat arms specialties, the Marine or soldier is strapped down with heavy equipment as needed by the mission. There is no accommodation for size and strength within male soldiers. They have to carry what the mission demands, and it should be so. The accommodations that you'll see in the future for female soldiers, and trust me, you will see these accommodations made, are totally nonsensical, as our purpose is to break stuff and kill people, not to provide opportunities. Every person within the unit must be able to hack it, or the unit fails. The unit failing means unnecessary deaths of your comrades. With these soon to be seen accommodations, men and women both will die unnecessarily. In the military, we've had different physical fitness standards for men and women since the beginning, acknowledging that men and women are built differently. However, those standards were derived when women would be performing functions not in the combat arms field. Now you will see progressives attempt to entrench and expand those different gender physical fitness standards to cause their narrative to be successful. They've already begun this by making the military justify every physical qualification there is for a combat arms type job. If the requirement, I remember the requirement for pull-ups was 3 pull-ups minimum as part of my physical fitness test. Now there are other tests also, but using this as an example, I had to accomplish 3 pull-ups minimum to pass, with a 20 pull-ups maximum for maximum score. These were incorporated with other events, pull-ups, a run, sit-ups, etc. Now, getting the 3 pull-ups minimum was passing for that event, but would probably not give me enough points to actually pass overall. Now, understand, I was constantly under pressure to achieve not only a passing score, but a first class score, which I did for the duration of my time in the service, as most males who were successful beyond boot camp are able to do, at least in combat arms. I didn't hang around a lot of pogues. Now, to support and entrench these physical fitness standards, they will point to the fact that, for example, a 40-year-old Marine Corps gunnery sergeant has a different standard than an 18-year-old private. I'm talking about males here. And they'll say, hey, there are already different standards in place based on age. This is such a non-argument, it shouldn't even be considered. The 40-year-old gunnery sergeant brings a lot to the table. He's already a battle-scarred veteran who has survived being an 18-year-old private and worked his way up through the ranks by taking hills and kicking indoors, yet he's no longer working in a position where he's taking hills and kicking down doors. He survived that, and he brings his experience and leadership to the table to guide those 18-year-old privates further in their survival. Along with that, his job is now different, and he has learned administrative and further leadership skills to accomplish that job. The 18-year-old G.I. Jane, however, theoretically should have similar strength, speed, and skill as the 18-year-old G.I. Joe. If that's not the case, we're just kidding ourselves about having women in combat. Now understand, one of the most crucial elements to physical fitness for success in combat is upper body strength. Women can train and do train up to a high standard of upper body strength, but without maintaining an intensity on that strength, those muscle groups, it quickly fades. Ask a woman athlete now, and they will tell you that is the fact. Hollywood likes to portray this female warrior is able to overcome any obstacle and do everything that a man can do just by grunting a little harder and trying a little harder, by gosh. But this is not the case. This is not the reality. I know what it's like to carry my full equipment, be strapped to a 200-pound Akio sled along with my teammates, and pull it through waist-deep snow for 12 hours at a time. If I didn't have adequate strength and size, I would weaken the rest of my team by causing them to work harder. The result could be the death of us all from exhaustion. Now, zoom out from that one little fire team in northern Norway and look at the U.S. military as a whole, and you will see that we have greatly weakened ourselves just now. Greatly. And with that weakness comes unnecessary death of our young men and women so that feminist progressives may further their agenda. The Marine Corps, unlike the Army, has the good sense to keep their boot camp integrated. Now, studies have shown that girls' schools and boys' schools, the students do better. I'm talking high school now. So students do better because these students are able to focus more on what's going on without distraction of the opposite sex. Men and women are different, and men and women are actually attracted to each other in most cases. I have a woman friend who was in the Army, and her experience in boot camp was so much different than my own. My own experience was just this massive rush to attempt to conform and keep up and learn the ways of the Marine Corps and pass every challenge that was put to me. Her main memory of boot camp was that of fending off sexual advances by other recruits and the drill sergeants themselves. This is her main takeaway from a boot camp. Now, a rifle company is a finely tuned machine with many working parts. Changes to their Spartan environment affect the way it functions. Unit performance, unit cohesiveness, that's everything from poor quality of food, lack of mail, etc., and so on. When I was in the Marine Corps, we lived in squad bays, which was one great big room that your whole platoon lived in together. You learned to get along with anyone and everyone in your platoon. You had to. If someone came in late at night, drunk and making a lot of noise, we kicked their ass, and his behavior changed. With that said, I really knew every member of my platoon and could get along with them. And if I was on duty with someone who wasn't one of my regular buddies, well, they were a member of my platoon and I knew them well enough to function. Just as I was getting out of the service, though, they were going to 3-man rooms. They were really nice and they were really comfortable. But it was noted that there was an immediate drop in unit cohesiveness because now you had all these small groups that could retreat to their private space, their safe space, so be it. And they didn't have to deal with everybody. They didn't have to learn these skills to meld together as a team. Little things mean a lot. Sure, in the field, everybody has a bad day. I succumbed to heat cramps. I had a friend that succumbed to hypothermia several times. These things happen in the field. Exhaustion, hypothermia, dehydration. Everybody has a bad day. And when that happened, you carried his gear. Semper Fi. But the guy who was always the weak link, who was always lagging behind, who was always falling back, got a beat down. Semper Fi. You hack it. You learn to hack it. You improve yourself because we're not carrying your crap every time out. The weak link was the man who made you suffer and could potentially get your whole fire team killed by his weakness. We applied extreme peer pressure for this person to improve himself. And basically this was not some baloney hazing. This was about decreasing our suffering and increasing our chances for survival. Now, fast forward 5 years into the future. The mission hasn't changed. The life has not changed for an infantryman since the Roman legionnaires. But we know that now everything else will. Some folks will not come home who should have come home. This isn't about some manly, macho, ego, all boys, he-man, woman haters club type of attitude. This is about the realities of survival. News item for you: men and women are different. Now I'd like to talk to you about desire versus ability. Career progression is usually stated as the reason that a woman is interested in a combat arms posting. In my career in the military, law enforcement, security contracting, I have met tons of women who had the desire to be an operator. And I've met tons of women that had the ability to be an operator. You got to say operator. Quotes sometimes. But in my entire career, spanning many, many years and spanning the globe, I have only encountered one woman that had both the ability and the desire. This woman's a good friend of mine, and I did close protection type work, PSD type work over in the Middle East with her. And she did great, and I'd serve with her anytime, in any climate and place. She's always had my back, and I'm proud to serve with her. But she's the odd exception, not the rule. Most of the women that I've met that had the desire but not the ability were on some sort of had some sort of pipe dream going about G.I. Jane the movie or whatever. And the women on the other side of the spectrum, the great athletes, the great shots that had the ability to actually perform the function, had absolutely no desire to perform it. Which brings me to want versus need. The number of women who actually want a combat arms posting is minuscule. If that were it, if that were the only thing here, I'd say go ahead, let them try. That's fine. Bring them in. Welcome. But the progressives have a totally different agenda than that, and I'll explain more on that as we go. Now, I've got to speak for a moment about the Marine Corps' female engagement teams that were used pretty extensively in Afghanistan. Now, these female engagement teams were designed to have a small group of 3 or 4 women to appear in the village with an infantry patrol, to therefore be able to communicate and identify with the women in the village and therefore bring out more intel from those women. And the women who, the WMs, the women Marines who performed this function, overall did an exceptional job. They had a feeling of great responsibility in their role in this performance, but also understand that although, yes, they did go out on infantry patrols and hump the gear along with the grunts, to include being involved in some very heavy combat action, they had a very heavy escort around them because we had to invest a great deal as they were a more desirable target. Wait, what? Yes, you kill your enemy's women, you've achieved quite the morale-busting goal. Okay, the facts. We've already determined that men and women are different. It took me 50 years, but I figured it out. Pregnancy data. The USS Acadia had an 8-month deployment during the first Gulf War. 36 of her 360 women on board had to transfer off due to pregnancies. Now, understand there were rules at the time. There's still always rules about fraternization, but boys will be boys and girls will be girls, and these things happen. Now, understand that 10% of the women on board were pulled out of their roles. They were pulled out of their job because of the pregnancy, which means that ship had to operate shorthanded, or other new people had to be brought in and then brought up to speed during wartime. The USS Eisenhower lost 38 women to pregnancy during her first year of integration. USS Theodore Roosevelt lost 45 out of 300 women to pregnancies during a deployment. And in our short military deployment to Bosnia, the U.S. Army lost 1 woman every 3 days to pregnancy, for a total of 118 women for the length of the deployment. Some data from the U.S. Army study. U.S. Army conducted a medical and psychological study relating to women's fitness for combat and found that in basic combat training, women are injured at twice the rate of men. Army women not only suffer higher physical injury rates, but also are stricken with significantly higher rate of mental or emotional disorders such as PTSD. The study conducted by the Army Surgeon General found that female soldiers suffer depression at more than double the rate of male soldiers, and one of the triggers of this depression is exposure to combat. Women also suffer twice the injuries of men when carrying 70 pounds of gear, which is about normal for an infantryman on patrol in combat. You can't say, okay, well, make them have smaller packs. You just can't do that. They've got to have the equipment for the mission. And what's going to happen is when they divvy out the belts of machine gun ammo that everybody's got to carry a little bit to support that machine gun, you're going to have Bob over here carrying 4 belts and Susie over there carrying 1 belt. Well, Bob's going to wear out faster. Some Marine Corps data. If any of you have read about this, you will see, if you do a Google search on the Marine Corps study regarding women in combat, if you check, just scroll down the Google page, and you'll see a lot of instances where they have attempted to discredit the Marine Corps study. And the reason why is the Marine Corps data does not support the narrative of progressive feminism. Therefore, it's got to be attacked. But the Marine Corps is always very thorough about this. The Marine Corps has always been a small organization, therefore it's easier to study. They also have always been ahead of the curve on racial desegregation, at women in the military overall, etc., because they realize that they've got to surf ahead of the crest of the wave. In 2012, Marine Corps initiated research aimed at finding a way to integrate women into combat units. While physical strength was not the only concern, it is one where the disparities between men and women could not be obscured or ignored. Data collected from 409 male Marines and 379 female Marines who had all volunteered for the study revealed several inconvenient truths during the testing. Now, testing was derived to actually achieve individual combat tasks and team combat tasks, and these were combined with the physical fitness tests and the combat fitness test to get an overall view of what it looked like. The numbers very clearly illustrated the difference between men and women. An example on the pull-ups. Men averaged 15.69 pull-ups compared to 3.59 pull-ups for women. Now understand that these are women that are already very, very fit going into it. And remember I said 3 pull-ups is the minimum for passing. And you've got to maintain that. And you've really got to do a whole lot more than 3 pull-ups to actually be successful. Clean and press tests, which involves lifting consistently heavier, progressively heavier weights ranging from 70 pounds to 115 pounds, produced an 80% pass rate with the men at the 115 pound mark, compared with only an 8.7% passing rate for the females at the 115 pound mark. In a 120 millimeter tank loading simulation drill, less than 1% of the men failed, compared with 18.68% for the women. Less than 1% of the men failed the lift and carry of the 155 artillery round, compared to 28.2% of women. They had an event with a high wall where they put an ammo can at the bottom to simulate a helping hand over the wall. I'm sorry, with a 20-inch box at the bottom, not an ammo can. Less than 1.2% of the men failed this event, compared with 21.32% of women. You can see these are wild different results. The tasks do not change. Combat does not change. 29 women attempted to pass the famously difficult Marine Infantry Officer course. Only 4 made it through the first day and then wound up failing out of the class. Further study from the Marine Corps was conducted just last year and this year with 400 male Marines and 100 female Marines. And this was actually designed to set up an integrated ground combat element. The executive summary stated that the female participants sustained nearly twice the number of injuries, were less accurate with infantry weapons, and had more trouble moving simulated wounded troops off the battlefield. During the testing period, 7 women made reports of sexual assault. All male units consistently outperformed integrated units during this test. And this is the part where the progressives and the progressive feminists stated that the test was not scientifically carried out properly, etc., and so on. We all know the glaring truth about this. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter was asked about this injury rate, and he stated that there are a number of studies that indicated that. Again, that's something that doesn't suggest to me that women shouldn't be admitted to those specialties if they're qualified. But it's something that's going to need to be taken into account in implementation. So these are real phenomena that affect gender, that are rather affected by gender, and need to be taken into account in implementation. What do you mean taken into account in implementation? Well, what they're talking about here is gender norming of the standards. Gender norming of the standards means bringing the standards down to a level where women can actually achieve them at the same consistency as men. However, it is now being said that gender norming may not be enough to achieve this, so women candidates, if you will, may actually have to have points added in addition to the gender norming to get up to an acceptable passing rate. I don't think ISIS is doing this. Now, Marine Corps General Joseph Dunford, who's the Joint Chiefs of Staff, actually is in disagreement with his boss, Ash Carter. In the past, as Marine Commandant, General Dunford had opposed, based on those studies, the integration of women into combat units. But General Dunford has been brought to bear. He has nothing. He can, if he doesn't agree with it, he can basically retire and get out, because there's no room for anything other than the progressive feminist narrative in this. Now, back to gender norming and the bonus points. The Obama administration has actually embraced what they call gender diversity metrics that could lead to higher performing personnel being replaced by those meeting minimum standards characterized as lower but equal. Good gosh. The Commission on Military Readiness revealed that researchers see the Marine Corps study as a way to question whether such tests as the physical fitness test or the combat fitness test serve as valid predictors of success in combat. All of this is designed to downplay the findings of the Army, the Marine Corps, and others that gender norming is actually a contradiction of gender neutral. Now, remember I told you about these extra points? They actually have a name for this: gender diversity dividends. Well, Steve, you scored a 225 on your PFT, but little Debbie Sue over here, she only scored a 185. she did a better job than you because she gets an extra 50 gender diversity points. And along with that, they're looking at reviewing the standards by taking the performance of the lowest performing 10% and using that to calculate what a passing score should actually be. Only 7.5% of the 30,000 women soldiers who responded to a recent survey said that they would be interested in a combat MOS. And when the Army polled both male and female soldiers about the physical standards, both male and female recipients stated that they should actually remain the same and not be altered. Now, did you know that the Rand Corporation and others have been drafted to gin up some supporting data to support the progressive narrative? So what you're going to see in the future is you're going to see tons of data that supports that, heck, women are probably better in combat because we did a study. Until we get another Way City, Fallujah type battle where you will see grossly the opposite. Okay, the pending reality. If the government wanted my son or one of my daughters to go to the war, well, first, I would want to go myself instead of them. With that being out of the question, I would say, okay, take my son. Not because I love him any less, but because he is athletic, he is stronger, he is bigger, he is more aggressive, and therefore would have a better chance of surviving and coming home to me. Now, at the beginning, I stated what we have lost. On the surface, it appears that, hey, we've struck a blow for feminism, and now girls, there's more girl power, and they'll have more opportunities. Yay! But that's not what just happened. Something greater just happened. On the surface, it seems that, yeah, that women now have the choice to do this. But it's never been about choice. It's always been about progressive goals and the progressive narrative. There's not going to be a lot of choice here. Let me tell you how this is going to work. Mark my words, you can bet money on this. First, I got to talk about recruiters, your friendly neighborhood recruiter. A lot of you know about recruiters. You've all heard stories about recruiters. Most of them are true. There's no exaggeration here. These are the used car salesmen. No, scratch that. These are the timeshare salesmen of the U.S. military. And that's their job. Their client is the military, not the poor kid who stumbles into their office looking for an opportunity. One thing that a lot of you might not realize, and that is really rarely spoken on, is one of the biggest games, or goals for that matter, for the recruiter, is to get recruits to sign up as open contract. The spiel usually goes about allowing the military to place you in a job that you're best suited for, that you would like the best, that you'd be most successful in. But it's got nothing to do with that. It's about developing a pool of people to quickly plug into spots where the military has a need. Makes sense. Open contract recruits leave the office, sign the paper and leave the office, and visions of being, super drone operators or computer brain surgeons or whatever, or helicopter pilots dancing through their head, and yet here they are just being fed into the big green machine. So they get through boot camp and they're assigned to school and they go there. Now guess what? Most people do not sign a contract to go in to the military as an infantryman, present company excluded. So there are always these huge shortages of personnel in the infantry. Guess what? Those open contract recruits that have visions of being a high-speed drone operator are now going to wind up dumped into the infantry. And guess what? The progressives want the numbers to quickly come up within the infantry, the numbers of women. So where are all these women going to get dumped that come in open contract? I bet over the next 5 years you will see a huge glut of women who are being recruited open contract. 100% of them will be put through infantry training school, because they will have to do that even with gender norming of the standards just to get They're numbers. It's throwing mud against the wall until you get some of it to stick. So it's not the bravest and strongest, as the Sierra Vista, Arizona newspaper states, but it's those who fell for the sales pitch. Now, these poor girls that are joining the military, open contract, just hoping for a better life, and they didn't bargain for this. They didn't want to be in the infantry. They didn't want to go overseas and kill. They wanted to better themselves and have some pride in themselves and learn a trade. And guess what? Now they're dumped in the infantry. Now, the infantry has always had lots of open contract men getting poured in, and either they adapt quickly through that severe peer pressure that I was talking about, or they wind up in the brig or a medical discharge or something like this. So it's march or die. There's no, oh, I'd really like to change my job. This isn't to my liking. It just doesn't happen that way. You're in there, you signed, guess what? March or die. Don't you see that the progressives want full integration, and they're going to pressure the military until they get it? And this is going to be done through changing the standards, through targeting recruiting efforts, and standards are going to suffer. Now, 2 women have passed the grueling Army Ranger course, and kudos to them. But that's not what this whole thing is about. It's not about them excelling and them doing good for them and them making the grade. This is about that continuing progressive narrative. And it'll involve a lack of choice and coercion and force to achieve their goals. Okay, we talked about the selective service. Some people might not know. Selective service means the draft. We have had the draft in my lifetime. I was a small child when Vietnam was going on, but it's been here. It may easily come again. And my opinion has greatly changed regarding the draft. I do believe that draftees make poor soldiers. I took pride in volunteering for the Marine Corps and volunteering for the infantry. But you know what? If we implement the draft without deferment or exemption every time our troops go into battle, our wars would be much shorter, for good reason, if they happened at all. Because the senators and congressmen's sons and daughters are now being fed into that green machine, along with everybody else. Now, you remember the less intelligent college-age feminist that I was talking about that's still cheering? It's because she doesn't realize all this. She doesn't realize that if we do initiate the draft, it won't be about her choice and her opportunities. It'll be about her being yanked up by the roots and being forced to stop her life, having to put herself into a situation that she had no interest in, and now being forced overseas to fight in a war that she doesn't understand why it started, nor does she support it. She's going to realize she's been sold a bill of goods by the radical feminists. And she's going to realize that this was never about choice. This is about advancing their agenda. And this is the new reality for young women. It's here. Congratulations. Now, how about her past experiences? I talked a little bit about the female engagement teams that the Marine Corps fielded. And these women did overall a very, very excellent job and fought hard and did their job well. I've encountered women in the military who were exceptional people and did their particular jobs. But we've also seen some instances which actually shocked us. We've seen women such as Jessica Lynch, Melissa Coleman, and Shoshana Johnson, who were all soldiers who were taken prisoner. And the facts I know that yes, Jessica Lynch and Melissa Coleman were both raped. I wasn't able to find much detail on Shoshana's situation, but both of the first two were brutally raped. And sure, you can stop and say, well, a man could be raped too, or both of them could be tortured or whatever. But you got to understand that we're not going to war against France or the UK or Germany, where we have some expectation of our captured soldiers being treated with some degree of civility. The places where we go to war, rape is a tool of war, and that will not change. Rape is a part of their culture. Talk about rape culture. They want to talk about rape culture on campus. Go to some of these countries where it is a rape culture. They're specifically targeting checkpoints or convoys or bases that have American women so that they can specifically partake in rape and so that they can specifically injure our morale by capturing or killing our women. Why? Because the vast majority of our country still cherishes and honors our women. But that does not support the progressive, radical, feminist narrative. And the progressive, radical, feminist narrative is not so much about equality for women and opportunities for women as it is about devaluing women. Devaluing women, blurring the lines between men and women, and screwing society into a little progressive paradise. Anyway, this is your new reality. Ladies, give you a tip. For all you college-age girls, I found that actually doing pull-ups and push-ups specifically every day without fail gave me good results. So you might keep that in mind because there's your future. All right. Sorry for the snarkiness, crassness, and rudeness. I respect our women in uniform. They do a damn great job every day. But I have got no use for these progressive thugs, these brown shirts that intend to devalue our women, defeminize our women, and cause us to be this faceless, shapeless mass of sheeple. Thanks for your time. Stay safe.